I may have just experienced the most ridiculous and chaotic manga arc that I've ever read, and that's saying something because I just read an arc where a chainsaw man rides upon a shark to face off versus a half-naked lady with a bomb for a head while riding on a typhoon. I was a fool to think this story couldn't get even more wild, but after all, this is Chainsaw Man. If you're new to this series, I cover Chainsaw Man from a completely blind perspective of never having read the manga, and spoiler alert, I love it. From the original devil hunter with a harem of ghouls, Santa Claus, Kobeni's car, and primal fears, oh boy, we have a lot to talk about. These are my completely blind thoughts, impressions, and review of Chainsaw Man. Thus begins the International Assassins arc. After the intensely fast pace that went along with our best girl Rize's antics, I was expecting for the next arc to be a little bit of a breather, but it's almost as if Fujimoto read my mind and did the exact opposite of a breather. In fact, I was left out of breath consistently as the most ridiculous and chaotic story unfolds further, and I couldn't keep myself from binging each arc trying to piece together the tumultuous arc that is the International Assassins. With the arc beginning with Denji once more dreaming about this mysterious door as he's told not to open it, it's clear what's behind this door will change everything if Denji were to open it. I'm unsure whether it's Pochita or his inner conscience is trying to tell him not to open it, but given Denji in these dreams is himself but younger, I speculate that it's his inner child repressing some form of world-breaking information to protect himself. Given these dreams just seem to be beginning now, perhaps him becoming the Chainsaw Man has something to do with the door appearing so much more in his slumber. Thankfully, Denji awakes from his dream to be reunited with his makeshift family with Aki in power, and this dynamic is everything Denji needs. Denji actually has a family. With Denji contemplating Rize and how after her he may never experience happiness again, it was quickly juxtaposed with him happy once more after Makima's invitation to go on vacation with her. Moments like this express the childish love that Denji has. He's like a kid who once he gets broken up with believes he'll never find love again, and he's learning these emotions at 16 because he never experienced anything like it before. They say that the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else, and although Denji isn't scoring anytime soon with Makima, I think we get the point. However, these brief moments of happiness are cut short due to Denji now becoming a media sensation, despite Makima's efforts to impose media restrictions on Denji. It's interesting how Makima wanted to keep Denji's identity as the Chainsaw Man under wraps. Clearly it's to protect him, but how could she expect the world not to learn of a man with a chainsaw as a head causing havoc? Makima's statement that this was Rize's whole objective, that the Soviets didn't care who got their hands on Denji as long as it wasn't her, it makes the whole dynamic even more clouded. Why would foreign nations be plotting against Makima and trying to take Denji as if he's merely a pawn to be utilized by varying entities? I'm still left pondering why Denji is so unique as the Chainsaw Man, but I'm impatient, so I pray Fujimoto will tell me exactly why soon enough. Within just a chapter, we go from a potential vacation to now assassins all over the world coming for Denji, which is the perfect exemplification of just how fast things change throughout this arc. One of the most interesting points of dialogue takes place with Angel and Aki, with Angel stating that the devils don't truly die, that they revive and come back in hell. It's an endless cycle of death and rebirth, and that devils don't remember what goes on in hell. However, the one thing they do remember is all before their death in hell, it's the sounds of a chainsaw. I read through this dialogue innumerable times, and even while writing this script I get chills at this concept. There's so much more to Pochita, and holy hell we are getting such a tease from Fujimoto. Given the chainsaw sound is the last thing they hear before dying in hell, I imagine Pochita is killing these devils off, although I'm clueless on the reason. This also gives my headcanon further speculation regarding Beam's undying loyalty towards Chainsaw Man and his reference as Lord Chainsaw. It seems the primary thing Beam remembers from his time in hell is his reverence of the Chainsaw Man, and it only makes me question more of Chainsaw Man's role as a devil. Within the next few chapters, we get introduced to the assassins all over the world coming for Denji, and of them, I was most fascinated with Quan Chi and her harem of devils. Her motivation to take this job to kill Denji is unique. She wants freedom and rights for her fiends. In a world where devil hunting is inherently a risky job only meant for the heartless, I found it compelling that despite that, she is fighting for individuals society doesn't consider as equal people, and it's quite ironic that she's fighting for fiends despite being a devil hunter. Quan Chi, a badass female character with an eye patch having a giant orgy with her women, quite the fucking introduction. Spoiler alert, Quan Chi becomes one of my favorite characters throughout this arc, as I'm sure you can tell by the thumbnail. The other character of note that was introduced is Santa Claus, who seems to be a genuine predator towards children. Fujimoto takes Santa Claus, who I'm sure many of us grew up loving the concept of, and turns him into a nightmare. Well done. With the stage now set, Denji now goes about his daily activities with a group of bodyguards, and let me just say, Denji does not seem to be the easiest to babysit, especially with power alongside him. Of Denji's bodyguards, the one that caught my eye design-wise was Yoshida. He reminds me of Crollo with his hair down, and if he's anything as clouded as his likeness suggests, then I'm a big fan. With 3 more bodyguards en route to go help Denji, they're extremely hyped up, and almost the moment they appear on page, they're immediately executed. This becomes a trend of Fujimoto where a character will be hyped up only to be killed almost immediately after, and it seems to be a sick game he enjoys to troll us with. As we're taken back to Denji's adventures, I couldn't help but bask in the brilliance that is Power's character. Watching her disgust and pain at eating vegetables just has her grow in terms of her rankings in my list of favorite Chainsaw Man characters. Speaking of favorite characters, we run into the throat goat Kobeni, Am I allowed to say that? God, I hope my girlfriend isn't watching. We witness Kobeni's dynamic with the Violence Fiend, who actually is pretty calm-mannered and likable. It's wild how the Violence Fiend is quite the opposite of being a violent, menacing individual, and he retains his humanity. He doesn't remember much of his past life outside of the fact that Makima saved him, and I raise my eyebrows at this commonality. The Violence Fiend and Kobeni eat some ice cream, and although it's not really important to the plot whatsoever, I love discussing Kobeni's interactions with the story because she's hysterical, and I mean that in both ways of the word. Like her story of having ice cream for her birthday and dropping it, it's everything I'd expect from her, but unfortunately ice cream time ends shortly as the story begins to ramp up with the assassins closing in, and as we get to that, we're seemingly interrupted by Kobeni's car. Good on her for buying one with her own money, but our best girl Power takes it for a spin and hits one of the assassins along with Denji with it. What an amazing coincidence from Power's superb driving, but as her gaslighting suggests, she isn't at fault, and instead poor Kobeni is. I don't think I've laughed at a chapter as hard as I did during chapter 57. It was the perfect comedic chapter for myself to enjoy, and I swear this solidified Power as one of my top favorite characters. 2 of the 3 brothers were disposed of as quickly as they came into the story, and although the characters aren't very notable, Yoshida's entrance into the alley to kill one of them was. Based on the interaction, it's clear he knew that both of them were part of the trio, and by him only killing one of the brothers and menacingly walking away, it was like he was sending a message that he fears them so little that he doesn't need to kill off the last brother. I'm not sure exactly what his power is, but I'm digging him so far. Given Fujimoto kills off characters on a whim, I'm not sure how long he'll last, but only time will tell. With Quan Chi's arrival to Tokyo, I expected her to get to the action quickly, and she does, but not the action we're talking about, Halloween. Instead, her and the harem peruse the city and relax. Santa Claus does not keep the same energy as Quan Chi, and he begins to turn people into living dolls. This power is terrifying due to the ability to create an army of soldiers just by touch, and he ensues the chaos that doesn't slow down. As I write this, I know just how ridiculous it sounds that we are just now entering the chaotic part of this arc, but it's a testament to just how wild things get. There's an incredible panel with Makima walking amongst dead bodies and dolls as Denji's role as bait finally comes to fruition as they enter the department store, which serves as a battleground for our cast of characters. We learn that if the doll devils touch one's clothing, they'll turn into dolls. However, this doesn't apply to fiends or devils. This puts all of Denji's bodyguards on my immediate death flag list as the department store is invaded as if it's a zombie apocalypse, and despite our hero seeming to run, one of the bodyguards affirms that they aren't running. Instead, they're using this as a moment to kill Santa Claus. God, that sounds so weird to say out loud. That due to so many dolls being around, it means Santa Claus is close. Although Santa is the older man we've been led to believe this entire time, it's something to note that the panel that follows the statement about Santa is of the master of Tolka instead of the old man. An amazing hint from Fujimoto regarding the real identity of old Claus, but we'll get to that later because Quan Chi finally ends her sexcapade and enters the fray. There's dialogue that was thankfully translated within the site I read from, and with the harem and Quan Chi's arrival, they say that a corpse is talking, and this comment will pay off later in immense folds. I was shocked at how she moved at seemingly light speed, where it came across to the human eye as her simply vanishing, but as she vanishes, she cuts the heads off everyone she passes with swift fashion. I was so hyped reading this chapter and watching the utter brutality that is our Quan Chi. Fujimoto is a god of creating strong badass female characters, and it's refreshing to see that within the story of Chainsaw Man, that time and time again the true threats and most powerful entities within the story are women. My god, how could anyone not love Quan Chi? She prioritizes her carnal desires over combat and indulges in the endless pleasures that are her fiends, and when she does fight, she's a calamity destroying everything in her path. I'm a sucker for sword-wielding characters, so this only adds to my love of Quan Chi. I'm not sure who can face her besides from Makima or Kishibe, because Angel and Aki can hardly even react to her attack, and they self-admit that they can't win. Speaking of Kishibe, he stands before the fiends who scoff at his power as if he's a regular guy, and oh boy, little do they know. As he arrives to stand before Quan Chi, who is 1v9ing the entire public safety division, he carries with him 2 of her precious fiends without a drop of sweat on him. Kishibe is such a badass and he knows just how to target Quan Chi's weakness. The dynamic of Quan Chi and Kishibe surprised me due to the immense history they have. She even states that he isn't Mad Dog Kishibe like he was before, and suggests that him being collared turned him into a real dog, and I thought of Makima instantly. Before I can think of that anymore, however, Kishibe confirms this with writing on paper that Makima is listening, and my god, this small panel changed everything. This not only confirmed that Makima is an antagonist of sorts in the eyes of Kishibe, but also confirmed my previous speculation that Makima can hear things going on all around the city and keeps an eye on everyone that way. The way Fujimoto develops the mystery around Makima sets her up to be the final boss of sorts, and at this moment, I'm still not sure if she'll be the final villain or a true necessary evil that exists in a world of gray. The following notes on the paper states that he's going to kill Makima, and he solicits her help. Immediately I felt vindicated for all my speculation regarding the uncertainty of Makima and all the sus things that I've questioned about her before. Well done, Fujimoto. If Quan Chi accepted this offer, I can't even imagine how great this duo would be, but unfortunately it's left to our imagination. Quan Chi in their discussion has a really reflective point of dialogue regarding perception, that sometimes the less you know about someone, the better. because you can live with the perception you personally craft as your own canon. However, when you truly learn about someone, although they themselves haven't changed, oftentimes reality is far less appealing than the idea we construct in our own heads. That ignorance is truly bliss. This dialogue isn't just exclusive to the story at hand, but our very lives. It's no coincidence that in these sequence of panels it cuts to Denji, because this isn't just a personal story about ignorance is bliss from Quan Chi, but a direct parallel to Denji's view of Makima. Denji loves the idea of Makima and everything he imagines her to be, but if he truly knew her, he'd understand that he'd be much happier to live as a dog with a collar, blindly obeying his owner. With all-out battle now taking place and Kobeni's poor car being crushed, Yoshida joins the battle once more and now fights versus Quan Chi and stands on somewhat equal footing. I don't know what he did to become so powerful, but color me impressed. Usually I'm a bit averse to chapters where there's simply too much going on, but Fujimoto does his paneling so well that despite at first glance easily being lost by the chaos, these panels and chapters flow so well that I'm honestly surprised at how much I love it. Undoubtedly, I had to read these chapters a lot slower to fully digest what's going on, but let me break it down for everyone for a quick synopsis. Fighting, lots of it, everywhere. The violence and fighting quickly turns into the rest of the arc becoming a horror manga of sorts, with Denji being placed into a crucifix position due to a voodoo nail as Tolka finally enacts the request from his master to kill Denji as Denji is ripped apart by this devil. Fujimoto has a brilliance with his writing style where he can take Chainsaw Man from making us laugh hysterically just chapters prior to now some of the most anxiety-inducing chapters that leave us in a state where our heroes are truly helpless for the first time. I adore horror movies and stories, so these elements spliced in only aid to my love of this manga. With Denji's crucifixion, Tolka's master arrives to congratulate her student, but the reward he receives isn't anything remotely I expected. Instead, he is told how a perfect doll is formed, and subsequently she turns him into one. I felt so big brain at picking up on the previous paneling regarding Santa Claus and her being juxtaposed with said panel, that the old man wasn't Santa Claus after all, but instead just a doll. This also fits in with the narrative that all these central villains are female, and I'm all here for it. With doll Santa Claus's sacrifice, all of our allies and foes are sent to hell, and this is where things take a turn. In a world with the sky adorned with endless doors, it took me back to Denji's very door he faces so many times within his dream. I was left wondering what could be behind these doors, but as the fiends begin to quiver and experience so much distress at realizing they're back in hell, we're soon given the answer by one of Quan Chi's fiends, that they're being watched by powerful devils, far beyond the likes of the gun devil who's been hyped up so much throughout this story, that these devils have never once experienced death, that they are primal devils. At the point of writing this, I have chills at this concept that there are devils far beyond the horrors we've seen within this world. Primal fears are fears found naturally within the human psyche, so it makes sense why these devils would be so strong. I can only speculate as to the identity of these primal fears, but I'd imagine there's a sickness, aging, darkness, heights, and death devil, which also ties into my 4 horsemen theory from last video within Makima. If Makima embodies the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, perhaps she sits just under the primal devils in terms of power, and if that's the case, it sets up so much hype for more primal devils to come. These devils in fact are so strong that one of the fiends even asked permission to kill herself to avoid what's to come. Given fiends hardly remember anything of hell, their fear is entirely indicative of the devils they're facing. It's primordial. It doesn't need to be remembered or taught. This fear is as old as time itself. Arriving to greet our cast of characters thrown into hell is none other than the darkness devil who stands before mutilated astronauts all praying. I was unsure on first glance why it was astronauts, but likely due to the astronauts being in space and surrounded by immense darkness, it's fitting for them to be the ones praying to their god of darkness. I have never felt that our characters were more helpless than standing before the darkness devil who dismembers all of the individuals with hell. Utter fucking terrifying. The Darkness Devil is easily the strongest entity we've been met with so far throughout this story, and he's now resting easily at my #1 spot on the power rankings. With the Doll Devil standing before the Darkness Devil, he states that he brought the chainsaw heart as per the contract, and in exchange he wants the power to kill Makima. The Darkness Devil gives up part of its flesh in order to fulfill the contract, ensuing in a power-up for Our Lady Santa Claus. Once more, I was scrambling my brain to find out why they want Denji's heart so badly, and why in the hell everybody is also preying on Makima's downfall, but it sets up so much foreshadowing for Denji's latent power. There's this continual theme of Denji never being able to enact his own free will or make decisions for himself, that instead he's drugged through the story due to everyone's vested interest in the heart that resides in his chest. And although a pawn at this current moment, I hope the story of Denji becomes one in which he is no longer a collared dog, but instead a man who forges his own path. However, at this moment, this isn't the story we're reading. What precedes is immense death and loss. In a final act of loyalty, Beam dies trying to revive Lord Chainsaw. With his final words, he says, "Revive and grant our wish." The wish he's speaking on behalf of is clearly from some of the devils, but this wish is clouded like much of the story. Knowing Fujimoto, there aren't any fake-out deaths this arc. This is the end of so many of our beloved characters. In a moment that genuinely had me tear up, the violence fiend who embodies the opposite of violence loses his life in a selfless way. He's had so much characterization in this arc, and it makes his death that much more painful. As the world begins to crumble, Aki's statement of not again as he watches power and Denji on the brink of death, it drives home the theme of Aki's character, the inability to protect anything he cares for. At this moment, I felt that the story was somehow going to come to a close, that it was GG go next. However, with the arrival of Princy, she tells Makima not to come because the Darkness Devil is baiting her in. But Makima doesn't care, and she enters Hell voluntarily to face off versus the Darkness Devil. I damn near jumped out of my chair at the hype of this moment of Makima finally fighting Sirius, and we see an ability from her we've never seen. With her grabbing the doll repeats after her to offer himself to send everyone back. Her power seems to be able to control the person she touches, which is a super overpowered ability. It's chilling that she can make others submit to her from a simple touch and give over control of themselves. Quite the femdom boss we love. This enables our cast of characters to leave Hell only to enter another Hell, which is the real world, with Santa Claus existing as a monstrous entity who I can't say I enjoyed looking at as I read through the final chapters of this arc. Listen, I'm all for nightmare fuel, but look at her, she's disgusting. With her new power, no attacks in the darkness work, and she stands to face off and kill Makima. With Denji seemingly dead in Makima's arms, she tells Denji to save her, and Denji arises to face off versus Santa Claus. Denji was lifeless before this request, but due to Makima using her power to control the doll devil just moments prior, I speculate that she used the same power to force Denji to revive and fight on her behalf. I don't think it was just a simple moment of Denji simping, but instead a subtle nod at Makima's power we just bore witness to, the power to control. Regarding Makima's power, Kishibe and Yoshida speak freely as Yoshida states that Makima can't hear their conversation, that one of her abilities is to borrow the hearing of lower forms of life, an unreal power, but this conversation in secrecy serves to set up Yoshida as part of the Kill Makima squad. With Denji now facing off versus Santa Claus, a surprising twist happens with Quan Chi joining the fight as she too is a hybrid. I'm not sure whether she's the archery hybrid or the crossbow hybrid, but nonetheless incredibly badass. I'm shocked that despite being dubbed the first devil hunter, that she of all things has a devil heart, but it explains why she still seems in her early 20s while Kishibe has significantly outaged her. Being a hybrid seems to stunt the physical aging of the person, so I guess that means Denji will forever look like he's 16. With the final fight of the arc beginning, the previous philosophy of Quan Chi comes up regarding ignorance being bliss. Denji is left with the task to kill the dolls who still exhibit their human traits and personalities. Denji is forced to be a killer or someone killed. Quan Chi tells him the dolls are only imitating humans, to kill them without hesitation. This ignorance she prescribes allows Denji to save himself and kill off the hordes of dolls. Whether they're still human or simply dolls imitating humans, this answer is never disclosed, and it's better that way. Ignorance is bliss, and if he knew the truth, he likely wouldn't be able to stomach it. I love this philosophy, and it makes Quan Chi such a compelling character due to this belief, that truth can be liberating or shackling, and it's a choice we must make to choose a blissful ignorance or stand eye to eye with the darkness that reality often is. Quan Chi in a key moment doesn't abide by her own philosophy, however, and when faced with some of her girls being turned to dolls, she isn't able to kill them, and Denji is left to shoulder the rest of the fight himself. And by shoulder the fight, I mean dump lighter fluid on himself and attack the Darkness Devil while covered in fire. This may be the smartest move Denji has ever made while fighting, and it embodies his reckless nature where he simply doesn't care how he wins. It won't be pretty, but it'll get the job done. Despite Denji being portrayed as stupid at most times, he isn't a stupid fighter, and I'm impressed by the way he countered Santa Claus by being on fire. Saying Santa Claus out loud in that sentence is something I never thought I'd say, but here we are. Denji is like the Doom guy except motivated by sex. He relentlessly keeps killing and getting back up no matter how many times he's seemingly thwarted. Truly incredible. Horniness can drive man to do all kinds of crazy things. Denji defeats Santa Claus, and upon Santa Claus' statement that any doll can become Santa Claus, she says that every day he will live his life stalked by death due to this concept. However, this isn't new to Denji. Every day of his life since he was a child, he was stalked by death. This is how it's always been, so why would he care? This conversation is cut short as Denji has his head cut short off as Quan Chi arrives back with Halloween, who emulates a Kamehameha wave and sends Santa Claus into a giant genjutsu. Halloween has been the only thing this fiend could say this entire arc, but now her true identity is revealed. She's the Cosmo Fiend, and her attack is one of the mind in which she gives Santa Claus the understanding of everything in the universe. That once you know everything, the only thing she'll have left to say is Halloween. I had immediate parallels to Gojo's Infinite Void, and this ability is the only way to truly defeat Santa Claus's interconnected mind to all the dolls. By her being overwhelmed by everything in the universe, she's defeated and discarded. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more crazy, Yoshida and Kishibe arrive and put on a blindfold as Makima walks past them. Quan Chi, the most feared devil hunter and first of her name, surrenders and begs for the life of her women before Makima. All Makima has in response is that a corpse is talking, the exact same line that was said before some of our Public Safety Division members were mutilated. Makima hears everything and doesn't forget, and she ends the life of the fiends and Quan Chi. Makima, as an overwhelming entity of this series, has solidified herself as one of the most incredible characters I've read in recent years. Standing before the Darkness Devil and saving everyone from hell, eliciting so much fear from the first devil hunter that she'd beg for her life, hearing everything around her and being on the hit list of every nation and devil on the planet. Makima is incredible. Whether a neutral evil or overwhelming antagonist, I adore her character, and only time will tell what entity she'll be revealed to be. My speculation regarding Makima embodying all horsemen of the apocalypse is still something I'm a full believer within. Makima this arc seems to embody the horsemen of war. This arc was full of war, all seemingly orchestrated by Makima, and with her now embodying 3 of the 4 horsemen, all that's left is famine, which I imagine we'll see her represent this next arc. The ignorance is bliss concept, which is my favorite concept introduced this arc, comes up one last time in the final panel. Yoshida asks Kishibe why he won't take his blindfold off, and Kishibe responds he doesn't want to see a thing. Kishibe would much prefer to live in ignorance to his old friend dying and being dismembered by the very woman he seeks to kill. Oftentimes, ignorance is best. Kishibe is one of my favorite characters of this story, and I'm so glad he's taking such a large role within the operation to kill Makima. He's one of the few super strong male characters in this story, and someone whose potential is only being hinted at. I'd love to see him fight all out, so I have high hopes for the next arc as the operation to kill the Gun Devil will soon begin. The International Assassins arc was one of the most ridiculous arcs I've ever read, and I mean that in the best way. From a band of brothers, to Santa Claus, to Quan Chi, the Harem Queen, we were introduced to some brilliant characters all sent to kill Denji. Due to the plot of this arc at first being much more predictable with assassins coming in, having them introduced and then subsequently fighting them, I was a bit unsure if Fujimoto would keep this predictability throughout this entire arc, so I was pleasantly surprised to see the giant twist with everyone being sent to hell and facing off versus the Darkness Devil. With so much death throughout this arc, I felt emotionally drained from losing several of our favorite fiends. Fujimoto let us know that death is something to be expected and isn't going away anytime soon. Honestly, at this point, the only person I feel is safe from death is Denji due to him being immortal and all, but dear God, that gives me shivers down my spine regarding my other favorites such as Kishibe, Kobeni, Aki, and Power. The story is reaching the apex of anticipation, and I can only imagine that once we reach the Gun Devil arc, that this roller coaster will descend down at a rapid pace and will be helpless against gravity. What will happen next? Will more primal fears arrive into the story? Will Makima complete my theory of her representing all of the 4 horsemen? Will Kobeni get an insurance check for her destroyed car? I guess we'll find out next time. If you stuck around this long, please do consider dropping a subscription to see more videos just like this. This has been hiXtrah, and as always, be greedier, and I will see you next time.